You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
Well, good evening, Radio 1 listeners. Thank you for tuning in to The Lyndia Grant Show. So happy you could join us today here on Spirit 1340 WYCB, the oldest gospel radio station in Washington, D.C., and it is the first contemporary gospel outlet in the United States. Today is Friday, September the 8th, 2023. Our show is heard throughout the DMV live at 6 p.m. You can listen live on Spirit 1340 anywhere in the world if you go to your cell phone or your computer. Just look for Listen Live, Spirit 1340. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and a copy of the show will come to your email every week. My guests today are a surprise guest for me. I was so happy when she said yes, attorney Dana Stebbins. We're going to talk about how Donald Trump and how he stacked the courts when he was president and what that could mean for his conviction or maybe no conviction. She and I are going to talk about that. I want to say hi to Dana, and then I want to tell y'all just about a minute of how we met. How are you today, Dana Stebbins?
I'm fine, Lyndia. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. You know, I met Dana back in 1983, so I think that's about 40 years ago. I don't know how she's still looking so gorgeous, but I know it's been 40 years when I met her. We just started my business on Georgia Avenue, me and my sisters, Critique Career Management, and we were the coordinators of the Georgia Avenue Day Festival and Parade appointed by Councilmember Charlene Jarvis. I got a letter or email or fax, or I can't remember, emails weren't out, so it was a fax, about a Women in Business Committee, and I saw all of these dynamic names of women that were on the committee, and I knew them even though I was new because I had been following the D.C. Chamber of Commerce, going to Women in Business conferences from here and there and everywhere, trying to learn everything and everybody. And when I saw this committee that Councilmember Jarvis had appointed and Dana Stebbins was the chair, I kept calling the councilmember's office saying I want to be on the committee. They said, no, you just getting started. This is for the more experienced companies. I was like the little engine that could, Dana. I would not stop calling. I wasn't going to. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill said you got to act like the little girl that was trying to get 50 cents from her boss for her slave mother. And they kept looking at this child because she wouldn't leave until she got that 50 cents. And they wondered how she had beat them because she just stood right there. And finally the man got sick of it and he gave her the 50 cents. That's what they must have did with me. I would not stop calling Dana. I told him, if I'm not on this committee, how can I learn? I need to watch, listen, and pay attention to all of these successful women. You know, you had the top women around African American and white, all around D.C. We were here, there, and everywhere doing this, that, and the other. And thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Wasn't that good? We had a ball. Oh, my God.
That was wonderful.
We convened with a big regional conference at the Washington Convention Center. I met everybody, and I'm telling you, still friends with those who are still alive today. So I wanted to get that in, and now we're going to go to Dr. Julianne Malvo, a nationally known economist, dean at Cal State Los Angeles. She's one of two president emeritus at Bennett College. She has her PhD in economics, and she's a world traveler. At Reverend Jesse Jack, she's the president of the Push Excel, the youth organization founded by Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. I want to say hello to Dr. Julianne. Let's talk politics, Dr. J.
Lyndia, thanks a lot. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Got so much today, and I'm going to try to get to all of it. But let's just start with the heat. The reason I want to start with the heat, they're sending children back home in Detroit, in Texas, because the classrooms are not adequately air-conditioned, and it's inhumane to have children inside in 100-degree weather. Mm-hmm. This is a political issue because it's a political and it's social and it's economic. What are parents who plan on their child being in school all day, what are they to do? In one story I saw, both the mother and the father, dad was out of town, the mother was on an assignment. They had to scramble to find a neighbor to pick up their children at school. I mean, there's stories like this again and again and again. And this heat, this global warming is what it is, has become a national and international emergency. I start with the heat also because when you talk emergency, guess what you talk about? Money. But the federal deficit has doubled in just 1 year. How come? Tax revenue has gone down. Mandatory spending, that's Medicare, Social Security, have gone up. In addition, COVID spending pushed us into deficit zone. You know, Republicans are going to jump on this like dogs on a bone, and it's something that Democrats are going to have to deal with as well. The bottom line on this one is we have to be very careful as our international situation is weakening. People are looking at what's happening internationally and saying the United States just ain't what it used to be. And they're not wrong. One of the things they're looking at, Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama, refuses to lift his hold on military appointments, which means there may not be a joint chief of staff. This makes us militarily weak at a time when the United States is being pushed to do more in the Ukraine. And indeed, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken snuck himself over there to Ukraine to meet with the Ukrainians and to talk about United States support. But support equals money, and this deficit is not going to go away. Speaking of money, student loan repayments are no longer suspended. During COVID for 3 years, people did not have to pay back their federal student loans, and interest was suspended. Now, as of October 1st, and for some people it's rolling, it may be later in October, but if you have a student loan, they're coming for you. Here's the problem. Not only are you paying the loan, but interest is now being calculated again. So some people who thought they were paying $500 a month are finding they're paying $600 or $700 a month. That's a huge shock for someone who makes, let's say, 50, 60, 70 grand a year. I mean, that's a lot of money to say an extra $500, $600, $700, $100 a month. So 43 million people owe student loans. Half of them say they're not ready to resume payments. 1 in 5 of them say they will struggle to make the payments. Some are unready, but they can do it. Some are going to be struggling. So economic issues are the center of what's going on right now in terms of the deficit, student loans, and then the fact that President Biden is not polling very well these days. Only 30% of all Americans, according to the most recent CNN poll, say that he's doing well. 58% of people say that his policies make things worse. He has only a 38% approval rate, and only 26% say he inspires confidence. Only a third of all Democrats say they want him as a nominee. 2/3 say they want somebody else. The biggest concern that people have, of course, is his age, which kind of, I get it. But at the same time, the likely opponent is only 2 or 3 years younger. So then we want to say all octogenarians should not be running. If you match him up with every Republican, the only one who can conclusively beat him is Nikki Haley. But all the other Republicans, if they pitted against him, they would. The margin of error is inconclusive. Even Tim Scott, Chris Christie, if they were the nominee, which they're not going to be, but if they were, Biden gets 46% and maybe they get 44%. Well, that's within the margin of error, but they could beat him. So that is really a challenging thing to look at right now when we think about, what we're looking at in terms of November. Now, Biden has other bad news. His son is likely to be indicted, will be indicted, according to David Weiss, a special counsel. And the majority of Americans, although mostly Republicans, think that as VP, President Biden may have been involved. The Trump 18, they've all pleaded not guilty to election tampering. 2 of the cases have been severed and will go to trial in October. The judge is deciding what to do about the others, including the previous president. And so there we have that. We also have, it's interesting, the Proud Boys were sentenced, and the ringleader, Enrique Tarrio, was given 22 years. The others between 15 and 18 years. What the government is saying is that this is serious. This was not a joke. This is not the kind of thing you do. This is really serious, a serious violation of the Constitution. And so we can cheer that this is, I hope this is finally over. But of course, Tario says that he wants to appeal his sentence. He thinks that 22 years was too harsh. Of course he does. But he didn't think it when he was organizing that conspiracy. So that is, I rushed through all of that, Lyndia, because I wanted to get through everything. I think I got it all. Mm-hmm. It's been an interesting week, and it looks like fasten your seatbelt, folks. But hopefully it's a seatbelt that has air conditioning, because we've got some more hot ones ahead.
Yes, we do.
Not only in politics, but also in economics.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Julian. Now we're going to go to a commercial break. We'll be back in a moment.
If it wasn't for my care coach at AmeriHealth, I probably wouldn't be so healthy right now. As a man, we don't get checkups or see a doctor regularly anyways. It's probably just a man thing because none of my partners go either. We know we should, but we just don't, and hope it works out.
So what changed for you?
AmeriHealth assigned me a care coach, somebody that gives one-on-one help, answer questions, explain things, and help set my appointments. She also helped me understand what having high blood pressure really means and ways to manage it so it doesn't kill me. It ain't nothing to play with. If you're a member of AmeriHealth, ask for a care coach. I'm glad I got mine.
At AmeriHealth, if you need a care coach, you can have one. Just call us at 1-877-759-6224 to get connected. 1-877-759-6224. This program is funded in part by the government of the District of Columbia Department of Healthcare Finance. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Washington and former religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
Ida B. Wells, born into enslavement, was a journalist and activist. An avid reader, she read through the entire Bible many times. Wells was once asked to leave the ladies' car and sit in the colored train. She refused and train officials pushed her. Ida B. Wells retaliated but was pushed off the train at the next stop. A crowd of whites applauded. She vowed to get even. 3 of her close friends were lynched for opening businesses that cut into profits of whites. Everything changed for Wells. She spoke out internationally against lynching of blacks for the rest of her life. Through her efforts, lynching in America nearly disappeared by the time of her death. And NAACP founder, we salute Ida B. Wells for Women's History Month.
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at washingtoninformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.
This is Frank Smith with the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest on the Green Line. Did you know that a recent study found that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not? So parents, teachers, and preachers, let's get moving. I promise you, if you bring your children to the African American Civil War Museum, they will be inspired by the images that they see. They will be impressed by our living history reenactors who are always available, and they will be involved in our scavenger hunt that takes them throughout our exhibit. That's the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Our hours are 10 to 6:30 on weekdays, 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. See it. Be inspired.
And we are back. You're listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Now we're going to go to part 2 of our show, where we talk to Attorney Dana Stebbins about what's going on with the former president, Donald Trump. Just let me tell you some more about Dana, other than she was a lawyer and she was the president of the Women in Business Committee back in the day, been doing so many fabulous things. Listen at why Charlene Drew Jarvis had her. She is Dana Brewington Stebbins, MSW, JD. She is an attorney with an advanced degree in human behavior and more than 25 years of experience, provides strategic advice in community and economic development activities that accounts for and accommodates the professional, social, and cultural uniqueness of the firm's clients and their business relationships. Previous employment includes partner, Wilkes Artist, PC, senior counsel to the chairman, United States House of Representatives, Committee on Small Business. She was special assistant to the Associate Administrator, U.S. Small Business Administration, Special Assistant to the Chairman, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and Judicial Clerk to the Honorable William C. Pryor. Ms. Stebbins is a graduate of Howard University, holding her BA and master's degrees in sociology, psychology, and she got her JD with honors from Howard University School of Law. She has published numerous articles on public policy issues, and she is a frequent lecturer at university and professional conferences on economic development and procurement strategies. Welcome to today's show, Dana Stebbins. I'm so happy. You know, I've traveled with you all those years, and that I was so young, I didn't know you had all that going on. Ain't that something? Girl, you're a tough chick. I'm telling you now.
Thank you so much, Lyndia. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so happy the Lord told me to call Dana to let's talk about this situation. Let's just get right to it.
Okay.
Dana, tell us, what do you mean by Trump impacts to the court system? Because I talked about he stacked the courts and all the stuff he done. Talk to us about what you're saying here.
Yes. Well, Donald Trump, when he was the president, appointed 234 federal judges. Now, there are only 816 active federal judges, so 234 is about 1/4 of the federal bench. Mm-hmm. And those 234 that he appointed during his term include 3 Supreme Court justices, 54 United States Court of Appeals judges, 174 judges for the United States District Courts, 3 judges to the U.S. Court of International Trade, and 26 other judges in specialty courts like federal claims and tax court. Mm-hmm. So he covered the breadth of the federal bench by appointing his judges. And the important thing about this is that federal judges are lifetime appointees. They serve until they either retire or they are deceased. They cannot be removed under the United States Articles 3 and 4 of the Constitution.
So this sounds like why some of the people that were arrested for Georgia are trying to go over to the federal side, yes. Maybe.
Yes.
You just helped me understand that, because I wasn't clear about that thing.
Well, you see, working with Mitch McConnell and other Senate Republicans, Donald Trump reshaped the federal courts for years to come. Because they're there for a lifetime, they make very important and crucial decisions. The majority of the Republican appointees came in under Donald Trump.
And unfortunately, even though he brought all these people in, the ones that he had were none of those. Am I right?
Yes.
The ones that are going to be presiding over his cases.
Well, some of them are federal appointees, but the reason the Georgia case is so critical, and I'm so happy it's going first, is in a state court. He does not appoint state judges. And so this judge and this prosecutor are state prosecutors. The other thing that means is that if he is convicted, I'm not sure he will be, but if he is, he won't be able to pardon himself or have any other Republican president pardon him, because you can't pardon convictions from state convictions. Okay? That's why they're trying so hard to move those cases out of the state court to the federal court.
Okay, now there's a distinction between blind justice and ideological justice. Tell us what that means.
Okay. I think most people, when they were growing up, saw the Statue of Liberty with the handkerchief blindfolded and the scales in the hands. If you remember that, that's supposed to be the symbol of blind and equal and fairness, equal justice in the United States. It's supposed to be blind. It's not supposed to take into account race, sex, ideology, political party,
status,
anything
right?
else. You're just supposed to money, nothing. You're just supposed to be equal in front of the court of law. Well, that hasn't been the case for black people for a long time anyway.
Exactly.
Justice has never been exactly blind to us. There have always been judges who saw things differently if the defendant or if the plaintiff was a person of color. But now, the judges that have been appointed by Trump are largely ideologically aligned with Trump's philosophy about make America great again. They're also aligned ideologically with the movement that the Senate has put in place now that affects women's reproductive rights, the right to abortion, the right to health care, those rights. They are all ideologically aligned. And so they can't be blind because there's a predisposition for those judges to view things in the way they have been taught or have learned to view them. See what I mean? So when the Supreme Court makes decisions now, you can count on those conservative justices to see things the way the progressive courts did not see them for so long. And the denial of all the rights that we have been given that they are slowly taking back, those are called ideological decisions. And they come out of those judges. That's the distinction.
And then what about, is there more moral outrage? What do you think? People are not outraged as much as they should be about how this democratic and judicial principles are going right now. Why is everybody so quiet?
Well, Lyndia, that's a good question, and I'm glad you asked it because I wondered the same thing. When Joe Biden ran on the saying that we're trying to save the soul of America, save the soul of democracy, that wasn't just a phrase. That really is critical. But when you're fighting every day to pay the rent, pay the mortgage, buy food, get your children to school, get them an education, find a safe, clean place to live, you often don't have time to think about these bigger things. And so because many of us, black, white, brown, otherwise, have been struggling because we're in the small or the large majority of people who have economic issues. There's only a small amount of people in the United States who control all the wealth and all the power in the United States.
Right.
It's a small, tiny group of them. The rest of us have to make a living every day and find out how to survive. And when you're doing that, you just don't have time to pay attention to everything else. And so somebody has to ring a bell. Somebody has to do a clarion call that says, pay attention. You're losing your democracy. You're losing your rights. You can do something about it, but you got to know and you got to be involved.
We only got about 30 seconds for this last question, Dana.
Yes.
Are you optimistic about whether the scales will tilt back towards fairness, decency, and truth anytime soon?
Lyndia, I am trying to be. I'm normally a very optimistic person, and when I was thinking about this question, I thought about the Martin Luther King quote that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Okay? That means it may take a long time. Yeah. But eventually we will restore the country, and we'll get there.
All right, Dana, we're going to have Attorney Dana Stebbins come back and talk to us some more next month. I just got to look at the calendar and see when there's an open date because this thing is fluid. It's moving along every day. So much going on. And we're going to talk about this in an intelligent manner. We're not going to talk, sabotage, none of that. We're just going to be telling you. You heard how Dana did that thing today? That's how she's going to keep doing it. So thank you, Dana Stebbins. You know I admire you so much, and thank you for being one of my mentors in my early days.
Thank you so much for having me, Lyndia Grant, and I'm looking forward to coming back again.
All right. Thank you, Dana Stebbins. And my daughter went to school with your daughter. I don't know if I got to tell you that.
She told me. Connection. Okay.
Yes, that at the middle school, Catholic school. I can't think of
Holy Name?
Holy Name. That's where they went to school together.
I will tell her. Okay.
All right, Tanika.
All right.
All right, then. Thanks for being my guest today. So now I'm going to go to my close. Thank you for tuning in to the Lyndia Grant Show. Next week, we're going to have another exciting show for you. And then I always like to ask you to join me at my church, the All Nations Baptist Church, where our pastor is the Reverend Dr. James Coleman. We're located at number 2 Rhode Island Avenue, Northeast Washington, D.C. Look for the church with the red door. We hope this show with Dr. Julianne Malvo and attorney Dana Stebbins has been helpful to you. I close with this each week. Earl Nightingale once said, "Words, thoughts, and deeds have a boomerang effect. So be careful what you send out, because we do become what we think about. As Scripture says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge." So think on these things from the Lyndia Grant Show. I'm your host, Lyndia Grant. Until next week, good day.
Thank you for listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.